Greetings clay crew. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this rainbow condiment caddy using a slab and hand building techniques. Here are your supplies. So you'll need your water. This loop carving tool is very useful for many things. Wooden knife tool. You need your needle tool. I really like to use either a fettling knife or an X-Acto blade. I have a little surgical blade here which is nice and sharp. I've got these wipeout tools which are very nice for helping with finishing. You can use your wooden knife tool, but if you have a wipeout tool, I highly recommend them. I've also got a couple different ribs here, my mud tools rib and my serrated rib. And this is just my sponge, my carving tool from my previous videos. Got a little dry paintbrush for cleaning stuff up. You'll need your corks in the next video for your salt and pepper shakers, and in this video you'll definitely need some sponges as props. To get started, I've got a slab rolled out here, and I use the slab roller, but I'm also going to just kind of slap it a little bit to stretch it out a little bit more because it tends to be on the thicker side when we use our slab roller, which is good because we do so many different projects with that. But I know that I wanted to just stretch it out a little bit. And I stretch it out by picking it up. I'm using by the wider end just because I don't want it to fall apart. And mostly gently just slapping it towards me. So I'm bringing my hands toward myself as I'm slapping the clay down. And this just thins it out just a little bit. So I've got a little bit lighter of a pot. Next, I'm using my rib tool to compress my clay. You want to compress in two directions, all over on both sides of your clay. This is helping those clay particles just get compressed together, and this will make them stronger and help prevent warping and uneven drying. Some of the uneven clay on the surface will come off on your rib, and it's a good idea to clean that as you go instead of reintroducing that into your clay. This is also a good time to smooth out any little divots that might have been left from your canvas when you're rolling out. And if you notice any little air bubbles that might have gotten stuck in there, this is the time to pop those with a needle tool, and then you can just smooth out that little section and remove the air bubble. To get the correct size for my rainbow, I use my already carved salt and pepper shakers to create my design. This is to try and make sure that it all fit together. You can also do this just by starting with a paper template and sketching out. I just sketched mine straight onto the clay, but you can do some prep work at home if you want to make sure that you have a perfectly even rainbow. You can even fold your paper in half, draw half a rainbow, unfold it, and it'll be even on both sides. But for this one, I just eyeballed it and traced it on there lightly with my needle tool, and then I'm cutting away the excess clay and peeling that away. Rather than trying to peel away the piece from the inside, I always peel away the extra pieces from the outside of the clay shape that I want, because this will prevent me from warping the cutout. So I took a little time and smoothed out the sharp edges, my cut edges, for this side is going to be the bottom of my piece, and I didn't want any harsh edges that would poke me later. So I smoothed them out with my finger, and then I just used my little rib tool to finish off the base before flipping it over. And then I decided that I wanted where the cups where my salt and pepper shaker would go to be rounded, so I just used those as a little template to help me round out the bottom of my rainbow. Using a needle tool, I just cut it, and then I made a little sketch mark for where I wanted the top rim to be for these little cups. Next, I rolled out a bunch of snakes, just taking a little wedge of clay and rolling it using my fingers, trying to keep even snake all over. If you get a lumpy one, it's good to spread your fingers out, and that helps even out the pressure. I also recommend rolling out all your snakes at once. That'll help you keep them all a little bit similar if you do them one after another. And you can line them up next to each other to make sure that they're the similar thickness. Then I went ahead and just added my score marks using my serrated rib in all the areas that I'm going to be placing my coiled rim. For this caddy, I wanted to make a little handle that would join in the very middle to cart it around. And I did this just with a piece of my slab that was left over, one of the cutout pieces, and I made it's kind of just a bow tie or dog bone shape, just fatter on one end and skinny in the middle. You can just draw like 2 circles fairly close together and then join them with a line on each side. Whatever you decide, it's a style choice, so you can even just use a coil for this, maybe something braided. But for my little slab, I just pinched the edges to smooth them out, make more of a tapered edge, something that's a little bit softer than the hard square. And then I held it in my hand and just used my finger to kind of scoop the inside and start to shape it so it will make that handle shape, a little arc. And then I'm just pinching it and shaping it into the style that I want it to fit on my piece. At this stage, my clay is getting closer to leather hard. The little slab that I'm using is a little bit softer than my base, but you can see that the base of the clay is stiffer. It doesn't wobble around when I lift it up. So make sure that your clay is not too plastic at this stage, because we are going to be handling it and moving it around a little bit. But I'm just taking time to make sure that my handle will fit nice and snugly when I go to attach it. So I am, again, just trying to stretch and shape it more before attaching it, because once it's attached on there, it'll be harder to shape it. I've even pressed my handle edges into the clay enough to where it's going to leave a mark. And this is going to help guide me where I need to make my score marks. So there it is, and I can use my little serrated edge to scratch and attach. And I'm just using some water to attach this. If you want, you can use a little bit of slip if your clay is getting a little bit drier, but mine's still plastic enough. I'm confident that it'll stick together. And then I'm just trying to smooth everything out and blend in to make sure that this handle is going to attach very well. This is where having props is going to be very useful to you. I'm just using some sponges. If you've got some foam, that is also useful. I ended up needing about 4 sponges just because of the height of my handle, because I'm going to flip this guy over so I can make sure to smooth out and blend the base. But I've got 4 sponges. Watch it flip over. And now I can safely smooth out that connection and make sure it's really, really well put together. Once I've sufficiently catlicked my base, I'm going to flip it back over, and I'm just going to compress the little seam here where my handle meets the rest of my clay. And then I'm just going to add my water as my slip and move on to my coil pinched rim. And I'm scoring my coils, my snakes, and attaching them to the score marks that I had made on my base. And I'm first going to just attach all my snakes. Some of them needed a little bit rehydrating. They dried out a little bit. That's okay. I'll get it back to where it needs to be. And pressing them into those score marks. And I always give a little wiggle wherever the scores are attaching, and that helps those little fingers, if you think of those score marks as little fingers that are reaching out to each other. just trying to wiggle them all together. And then at each connection where I need a new coil, I overlap them and then use my knife to cut them all the way through. This way I get an even connection, and so they match up instead of creating one lumpy section and one skinny section right next to each other, because usually the coils aren't perfectly even all throughout. But if I overlap them and cut right through, I can get a beveled edge that will come together very nicely. After it's all slipped and scored, I'm going to use my wooden knife tool, and I'm using that to blend my seams, particularly on the outside. I'm going to blend the base of my piece into the coils and vice versa, just back and forth. I push the clay to make it all one solid piece. And I'm going to do this all the way around to make everything connect. Creating the same connections on the inside, making sure I'm smoothing out my seam and blending that together, just using my wooden knife tool. Keep in mind this video is sped up 20 times the regular speed. Please take your time, use your water. Mine needed rehydrating as I went, and then once it's all connected, you can start pinching. So I wanted a more delicate rim, not just kind of these lumpy lug coils on the edge, and I just used some water because my clay was getting on more of the stiff leather hard side, so I'm adding water to my rim, and I'm just using my fingers to pinch it and thin it out, and I'm just going back and forth with it. Be careful adding too much water. I was working on a canvas surface, but the canvas was attached to the wood board, and so when I added too much water, the clay actually got a little bit suctioned onto the surface and made it difficult for me to rotate my piece and work with it on the surface, so I had to wait until it got a little bit drier. So to avoid this, having a canvas that you can pick up and peel off of your piece will be very useful. Or just making sure you're not using so much water. I just spilled a little bit too much on here. And that's pretty much it. The rest of my time was spent really just cat licking and futzing with my rim and everything, trying to make sure everything was just as smooth as I wanted it to be. And it wasn't me trying to make it smooth. I actually left a lot of the impressions from my fingers on these pieces, which I really like. Adds to that really hand-built quality to it, where you can really just see the hand of the maker. Finish it all off with my little finishing sponge just to get rid of any last little boogers, and put it in for a low fire 04. So this was actually one of 3 styles of caddies that I made, and this one was just the most successful, I thought. I also made this piece, which was a combination of slab and pinch pot, and so was the other one. Just with different amounts of cups and different ways of putting them together, but they're all just slabs and pinch pots, so similar techniques that I've done in this video. Things to remember if you're trying out any of these tall standing caddies is to allow your pieces enough time to dry, because they're thin slabs and they're tall, leaving them to dry for a little bit longer with plastic for 1 week, and that can help to minimize warping. That's all for this video. In the next one, I will go over my glazing techniques for these pieces, as well as how you can cut corks to fit your salt and pepper shakers. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the studio. Bless you.
Thank you.